Good morning and welcome to the December Water Resources Board meeting, briefing meeting. We're live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All right, good morning. Welcome to the briefing meeting of the Board of Water Resources. Thanks for letting us be a little slow to start this morning. Had a couple of things that we're juggling, but we're happy to get rolling with our briefing meeting. Today is December 11th, 2024. Just rolling really close into 2025. Last meeting for the Board of Resources of the year. We are gathered here at the Department of Natural Resources in Salt Lake City, Utah. We'll just jump into the briefing meeting. We've got a lot to discuss today. Our full board meeting will start at 10 a.m. I will note that Candace Hassenjaeger is out this morning, so we've got Joel Williams filling in, which I'm so grateful for. Thank you. And Mike Davis is excused from the briefing meeting. He will be attending the full board meeting online. I believe that we have Dana Van Horn online right now. And Brian Steed will be joining us shortly, and I will note that the rest of the board meeting members are present for this meeting, and then we'll do the full introductions when we go into the full meeting. So with that, why don't we jump into our agenda? Got the board agenda items. So, sorry, I've got to get myself organized a little bit here. Oh, go ahead, Shalane. Oh, that's what I'm getting confused about. Oh, okay. I get that Shalane asked that we go ahead and introduce ourselves, and then we will have Joel introduce the staff. So I actually failed to mention I'm Juliette Tennert. I had the pleasure to chair the Board of Water Resources this year, representing Salt Lake and Tooele.
Madam Chair, I'm Charles Holmgren. I represent the Bear River Basin, Box Elder, Cache, and Rich counties.
Kyle Stevens. I represent the Weber River District.
Spencer Jones, representing the Lower Colorado River Basin.
Blaine Ibsen, represent the Sevier River District.
Randy Crozier, represent the Green River District.
Thank you. And as we noted, the board members who are participating online, there's Dana Van Horn. Dana?
Dana Van Horn, Upper Colorado District, Emory, Carbon, Grand, and San Juan counties.
All right, thank you. And we will hear hopefully from Mike Davis and Brian Steed later. Joel, will you introduce your team, please?
From the Division of Water Resources, I'm looking at the audience. I see Ethan, Brad, Tom, Shelby, Matthew, Blue, Todd, Marisa, Shalane, Sarah, and Shannon. And then online I see Ani, and that might be the only online. And then I think that covers us.
All right, thank you.
Oh, and then I guess running the show in the back room, we have Carmen, Paul, and Seth.
That's right. It wouldn't be possible without them. And we've got to note that if we have any new employees this month, we'd like to do introductions. Do we have anyone here? Yes. Oh, I thought okay. Do you want to make those introductions? Come on up, yeah.
All right, good morning. I want to introduce Blue Herbst and Matthew O'Brien. They are two new hires. We hired them on as water conservation technicians, and so they are assisting with our landscape incentives program, doing site visits. They've also been really great at resource development. Very fortunate to have them, and welcome to Water Resources.
All right, thank you. Welcome. Actually, I'm sorry, don't get off the hook. Come and do just 30 seconds really quickly about yourselves. Thank you. Thanks for joining us.
Hi. Yeah, as Shelby said, I'm Matthew O'Brien. Studied environmental science and am passionate about the state of Utah. I love it here. Plan on living here for a long time and continuing to learn about it. And do what I can to conserve our natural resources.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, Blue Herbst. Studied environmental science with a focus in decomposition biology. I have a lot of legislative past work, and really glad to be here and glad to learn. So thanks for having me. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Welcome to to both of you, and thanks for joining the team. Work you do is very important. Okay. Now we can go on to board items. So it looks like the first one that we'll have on the agenda is RE 490, which is Clinton City. And Tom's going to give us the download on that. As Tom's coming up, Kyle, do you have anything you'd like to set up on this one for us?
No, I'll let Tom go ahead and present this. Again, that area of the state up around northern Davis County, there's a lot of reconstruction taking place, being initiated with the freeway and further road expansions, and so this is a part of that overall effort.
Great. Thanks, Kyle.
So, Madam Chair, members of the board, if you want me to keep it really short, I'll just say, remember last board meeting when you authorized the Davis-Weber one? This is the other side of the road.
Oh, yeah.
For culinary water with
Okay.
Clinton City. So that kind of, in a nutshell, explains it. They have a 70-year-old cast iron pipe and a 40-year-old ductile iron pipe that are in the roadway that if it gets covered with concrete pavement with UDOT's improvements, they'll have a mess repairing those and replacing those in the future. So they just want to be proactive and replace those and move them off to the side of the road. So that's a $4,588,000 project, and this is just what the city is responsible for. The total project cost is higher, but UDOT's paying for some of it. So what you're looking at today is just what the city is responsible for. So UDOT is paying for part of it, but that's not included in this cost estimate. For the cost sharing, we're providing 85% of that. They're coming up with 15%. So it's our recommended amount is $3.9 million. And our recommended repayment is 3.09% interest over 15 years with payments of approximately $356,000. They will be asking for a 20-year repayment today. So I've calculated the numbers just in case the board wants to go that direction. So those numbers are available, and they can give their explanation about why when they get here in the board meeting. So maybe it'd be good to go over how we came up with our repayment. So if you look at the financial feasibility section, there's a chart. The board's affordability guideline is that residents can pay 1.4% of the median adjusted gross income of the area. So that amount calculates out to be $74.20 per connection per month. So in that chart, it shows what an average resident is currently paying and will be paying with our recommended loan terms. So you're looking at that, the total, you have the average culinary water bill and average secondary water bill, property tax they pay to Weber Basin that's based on water or tied to water, and then the proposed, what it would cost per connection for their proposed loan. And that adds up to $62.18. And that's lower than the target affordability guidelines, so that's why we give them the higher interest rate and the shorter years. So if you have any questions about that or anything else of the project.
Madam Chair, if I could, so if I understand that correctly, what you just explained, Tom, is that they could afford to pay up to $74.20 for a monthly water assessment, but their actual cost based on today's funding and such would be 6218. So it's
Right.
a $12 difference.
Right.
Okay, but yet they're going to be asking for a 20-year instead of a 15-year. Okay, so I just wanted to, bring that out for.
Okay.
So based on the 20-year, it's $282,000 payment. So that's
So 282 versus 356.
right.
Okay.
So that knocks down things a little bit, about $10 per connection per year, as far as the cost of the different loan repayment scenarios.
So Tom, are they going to ask for a different interest rate also, or just the period, the 20 years versus 15?
Just the extended years, unless they want to surprise me, and then I won't have the numbers back. As of yesterday, they were just asking for 20 years, or will be asking for 20 years.
And that was just based on like financial hardship, or did they explain what they're?
Yeah, you look in that area, and all the water rates in that the area that's covered by Davis Weber that I'm familiar with because I've worked with them so long, they have lower water rates. In Clinton City's case, in addition to this 1800 North project that they are coming to the board for today, they were involved in the 2000 West project, which the board gave money to Davis Weber for that one, but the city had enough money to pay their cost share on that. And it was about double what they were expecting. So they're kind of broke right now. So that's why they need to come to the board. And it's looking like UDOT will continue those road improvements north on 2000 West and further west on the 800 North. So there will be future projects that will impact the city. So I think will be their reasoning, is that they've already paid out all their money and they will have to come up with more money. So they just want a little better deal.
One other question, have they had previous loans with the board?
Yes, it's been long enough that those are totally paid off.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay. I mean, I'm not particularly inclined to support a longer period, but
Madam Chair?
yes, please.
Hi. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I'm not inclined either. I mean, $12 off the affordability seems like a lot, and I'm not inclined
Great.
either.
Thank you. All right. Kyle, did you?
Well, I asked this question of Tom earlier, so we'll just let them, I guess, present their justification for it, and then have that discussion in the board meeting. And I guess I would ask, Dana and you have already kind of voiced your opinion relative to that, what the feel of the rest of the board members would be for that type of request.
Okay. You go.
One comment I might make is just that it's obvious they're going to have some additional requests, I assume, from what Tom's mentioned coming forward, and I think that there needs to be lenience with those next, with those next proposals, because of the construction and all that's going on, they're going to get hit with more and more, would be my assumption. I'm okay with what's recommended, but I think we definitely need to keep in mind in the future as they look to other projects. That's just kind of my feelings.
Great. All right. I assume, Kyle, you're all good on the motion for that one?
Yes.
And then we'll see what their reasoning is. Maybe they'll make a compelling argument.
Right.
All right. And if you feel like you have to change your motion, of course, we'll hear it. In kind of the scuffle of this morning, did not check in on the meeting minutes. So our first action item will be to approve the meeting minutes before we go into the feasibility reports. And so just checking in to see if anyone had any comments or changes for those minutes.
Madam Chair, I thought they looked good.
Yes. Shannon does a nice job for us. Yeah,
Yes.
thank you. Thank you. Charles, will you be willing to?
Yes, Madam Chair, I
Okay,
will.
I appreciate that. All right, let's go ahead and jump into our next feasibility report. Draper Irrigation Company. Ethan's going to present on this one. This one is in my area, and I will admit that, you know, I've been close to some of these projects with Draper Irrigation Company. This particular one, I actually was managing some family stuff out of state while Ethan was doing the investigation. So I wasn't as close to this one as I would like to be, but it's in Ethan's good hands, and he'll go ahead and share the details with us. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Madam Chair, members of the board. So for Draper Irrigation Company, this project would be coming from the revolving construction fund, looking at a total project cost estimate of $1,132,000. And so just a quick summary of the project. It includes replacement of about 2,600 feet of an existing 10-inch cast iron drinking water main line with 12-inch PVC pipe. And so that'll also include, along that area where the pipe is being replaced, some new fire hydrants and residential connections and a new PRV station. And so the cost sharing, we're looking at a 85-15 split, which is kind of the max for that fund. And so the Board of Water Resources would be responsible for, or it would be, the purchase agreement would be $962,000, and then the applicant would be responsible for $170,000 of that total project cost estimate. And so in their financial feasibility, they were above the affordability guideline. So the terms, the staff recommendation will be that the board authorize 85% of the project cost up to $962,000, and then the project will be purchased at 0% interest over 25 years with annual payments of approximately $38,500. And so, yeah, I think that's that. Any questions or?
Ethan, can you remind us what the financing would look like or what the default financing would look like if they were under the affordability guidelines?
It would be.
And I don't even need numbers. I'm just more thinking about like the interest rate and the timing.
For this one, I think the interest rate just stays at 0.
Is that right? 0.
But yeah, it's a revolving construction fund, so it would stay at 0. The term or the amount of years would go down, so it could go as low as 15.
Okay. Thank you. I'm just asking, just kind of taking information and trying to get the lay of the land on some of this stuff. I mean, I'm supportive of this project. It's necessary. These pipes are need to be replaced, but I just start to think about conservation, and this is to make sure that we can fund growth efficiently. And so I'm just kind of thinking through like how that all works. But thank you, appreciate that. Questions and comments from the board? Right.
Madam Chair, just looking on the financial feasibility, it states that they could afford to pay $81.67 a month, and it looks like it'll be $90.55 per month. So
yeah, it's a pretty big. Actually, maybe Ethan, can you remind us of some of the other projects that we have with this entity right now?
Yeah, I think there's 5 projects that are currently that are still being repaid, and I can't remember how many of them are actually under construction. I think, is there a secondary meter one? Maybe not, I could be wrong about that.
Yeah. I mean, I should keep track of these. I just know that we've definitely.
Yeah, let's see.
know if it is actually.
Might be actually, sorry.
I'm just looking here at the
Yeah.
front of our packet here. On page 4, it lists a couple of them.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we've previously funded 7 projects, and, yeah, so one is with an ARPA grant. I'm assuming that's probably secondary meters.
Great.
And then there's 4 more that are scheduled to be repaid back, and it says between 2037 and 2049.
That's great.
And so,
That's great.
yeah.
Thank you. All right. All right. Spencer, do you mind making the motion for me on that one? Are you?
Yeah, I'd be
willing
okay
to?
to do
Okay,
that.
I appreciate that. All right, if there are no further questions on that one, we've got committal of funds. Oh, and I guess I should mention, I assume that Draper City folks will be here in person. I assume that Clinton City folks will too. Maurice's got a nice list for us, but we know that we'll have the applicants available for both of those reports to ask questions of, obviously. All right, so committal of funds. First is RL 593, Heber City, drinking water. And that is in Mike's area, and Mike's not here yet, so we'll just go ahead and have Brad jump right on in.
All right, Madam Chair and the board, good morning. So the Heber City, this will be for the culinary side of the project. They are undertaking a large water infrastructure project that involves replacing aging sewer and drinking water systems, as long as installing a pressurized irrigation, or an expansion of the pressurized irrigation. And so this will be for the culinary system, which includes replacing approximately 12,500 feet of 8-inch drinking water main line and 5,100 feet of 1-inch lateral. And the cost estimate and sharing remain as previously authorized. But we will have more to talk about Heber City in an upcoming project for special items.
Great.
And then the loan will be in the form of a bond, and their closing date is set for December 18th. And for the cost share, it will remain at $3 million for 0% interest over 25 years, and we're able to get that 0% interest because of the Water Cities Loan Fund. And any questions?
Questions, comments? Go ahead, Charles.
Madam Chair, Brad, explain to me the reason that it's 0% interest when it's over $1 million loan.
We can hit that 0% interest from the city's water loan fund because they are a city corporation instead of a irrigation company, from my understanding. That's correct? Yeah.
Okay.
That's right.
And is that because it's a bond as well, or?
No, that shouldn't have anything to do with it, just the city.
Okay. Marisa.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
So the city's water fund it's for municipalities. Is it also for districts? And districts, it's a smaller fund. It doesn't, Conservation Development Fund is much bigger. It's funded differently, but we checked with Shalane beforehand to see how much money, if there was money available in there, and there's plenty of money available in there. So we went with that.
This is a little bit of a curveball. We don't see very many of these.
Yeah.
And I had the same question when I looked at it, and then the lights came on. Oh, that's this fund over here. Yeah, our guidelines are different for that particular fund.
Thank you, Marisa.
Yeah, so Madam Chair, if I
Yes,
may,
yeah,
so that's what was authorized before, and so the other project that's coming up here,
Okay.
they're constructing all at the same time.
Yeah.
That one we went with the cities as well. So
Do you mind if we talk about the other one at the same time? Or Brad, are you prepared
Sure.
to do that? I'm kind of throwing you a little bit of a curveball. Is that all right with the group? It might be nice to talk about them together.
Sure. Yeah, it is.
So let's the special item RL 594 then, and then
correct.
See if we can pop through on the.
So this one's pretty similar, but it is involving the extension of that pressurized irrigation line. So they'll be constructing instead of replacing the pipeline. And then this will entail installing approximately 15,000 feet of 6-inch PVC pipe and 3,500 feet of 1-inch lateral. And we plan to authorize and commit at the same time because it is essentially the same project as RL 593. And so it would fall under that special items. And then we're going for 85% of the project cost up to $1,343,000 in the form of a bond as well at 0% interest for 25 years. And let me think. They plan to close on the same date of December 18th. They came to us, the board, looking for money later because they had some previous money that fell through. I don't remember which type it was, but I just know that it fell through, and now they came to us asking for more money. So.
Thanks, Brett. Thanks, Brad. Are there any questions or comments on this one from the board? Okay.
I just had one. Just
yeah, please go ahead.
Point of clarification here, I guess.
Yeah.
So when we say cities, I mean, does that qualify as towns as well that aren't incorporated?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So really, pretty much anyone other than private and irrigation districts or irrigation companies. Then is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. It's specifically set up, and as even in the name, Cities Water Loan Fund, it does say cities, towns, municipalities.
Okay.
So districts do fall into that. But it definitely does have some differences from the C&D fund, which, yeah, we can cover just about anything. But Cities Water Loan Fund does have those specific things. And this was a good one where Heber's already over the affordability. The difference in the Cities Water Loan Fund and the C&D is also the C&D fund is the one where sales tax comes into. Cities Water Loan is purely just repayments and interest it earns on the account where the fund is sitting. So it doesn't grow a lot. There aren't regular appropriations into it, and that's why we haven't used it a lot. But this was a good fit.
Okay. And so and you mentioned the affordability guideline, Shalane. So just to clarify again, so they are over whatever the guideline would suggest is affordable.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why the default is the 25 years.
Yes.
As opposed to a shorter time period.
Correct.
Okay. I will say I'm kind of grappling with thinking about this affordability guideline and the higher payments when if there's not conservation going on. I'm like trying to kind of figure out. And we've done this. So we have the affordability guideline, and if they've gotten to the point where they're past what the calculation shows as affordable, we have generally offered the better terms, which makes sense. But now that I'm kind of thinking through this more and more, there seems like there's a differentiation between those projects that are water conservation versus something else, and I'm just talking out loud, and it's neither here nor there. But
Well,
food
and
for
I
thought
do
for
think,
later.
I do think
Yeah.
there are some conservation
Okay, yeah. Can you?
aspects to these projects.
Yeah, okay.
Specifically, the pressurized irrigation is expanding
That's helpful.
to an
Thank
area
you.
that's currently using culinary to water their lawns. So while it may be a swap, one water for another, it's at least conserving their culinary water. And I believe the culinary system, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is going to reduce leaks, issues that they might have in their system also. So it may not be blatantly a conservation project, but it's more the typical board responsible taking care of the system to be more efficient in their use.
Can I ask a question about that? Do we have any notion of how much water savings there might be as part of
I have that in their application.
Board Member Steve, just so you know, I actually jumped a whole bunch of agenda items to talk about this one, so Brad might not have all of his notes up with him right now, so just so you know. But I please, Brad, share what you can.
I don't remember the exact number, but I think
There's not a number. Why don't you go to the water conservation part in your report? You have it.
Yeah.
let's see here.
I threw a curveball in a morning where I'm not sure that I would be able to accept a curveball, having not had any caffeine yet this morning. Need a coffee or a Diet Coke here,
Or
staff.
it doesn't give a specific number, but
So this is on the second to last, it's the
Yeah.
page just before the map on this project.
Yeah, okay. And maybe
Right.
we can have the applicant ready to answer that question during the meeting too. That would be
sure,
helpful.
yeah.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead, please.
and maybe we can ask the applicant to have this answer ready as well. I'm curious as to what, if how impact fees that they may charge on the secondary system, and on the culinary system are, gonna play into this. If they're expanding their system, are they charging impact fees to the new connections? Or just providing them at the expense of all the other residents?
Yeah, there will be impact fees. They have a whole fee schedule set up.
Thank you.
For the secondary?
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Board Member Van Horn, will you also maybe plan to ask that in the meeting if it's appropriate, just to get it on the formal meeting record?
I'd be happy to. I do know that many places don't charge impact fees for secondary water, and I think it's important that they do, just from a repayment standpoint. And if they're getting new customers, they need to develop new stuff. So
Great.
it's important.
Thank you. All right. Good. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, why don't, yeah, Brad, please go ahead. Thanks.
All right, this is our water conservation paragraph for the special item report. Expansion of the secondary system in the area currently served only by drinking water will not necessarily conserve water. However, metering secondary use separately from drinking water will make residents more aware of their water use for outdoor irrigation. It will also allow the city to better educate their customers regarding their outdoor irrigation use.
Okay.
And it'll be metered, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions or comments? I assume that Mike Davis will make the motion for this one. Okay, let's.
Chair, can I ask
Yes,
one
please go ahead.
question?
Yes, please go ahead.
On the cost differential between the secondary and the culinary water, I'm guessing the secondary water is substantially cheaper, correct?
Correct, yeah. The total was about $3 million for culinary and then about 1.3 million for
And
secondary.
my guess is this will be cheaper for the customers as well, correct?
Oh, cool. Okay.
I would assume so, yes. I guess
the
that'd
water
be
will
a
be
question
the
for
less
Heber,
price.
yeah.
So this actually may increase the water use, right?
I guess that'd be up for debate. I have no idea.
Okay. Got it.
Shalane's coming up. That's great. Thank you.
If I could make one note, in the financial feasibility table, you can see there's a cost per connection, and it does show that the average drinking water bill is $52.86. The average secondary bill is about $26. Now, the one thing I will say, and I don't know if, I'm assuming this is similar to how I pay my secondary water. My secondary water bill is for all year long, even though I only get to use it for 5 months of the year. So even though it seems cheaper, it's not a whole lot cheaper.
But it's not on a tiered system either, right? Secondary would not be required to be tiered.
No, although with meters, we're hoping the education of consumers leads to conservation. That's part of the whole ARPA secondary meter stuff. Right. So you're right. It's not. But you can see the proposed bonds that we're asking for today, the two different projects, do add just a little bit to those connections. So you're right. It could lead to overuse on some. Hopefully with a meter and education, it won't. Yeah.
Thanks.
Madam Chair.
Yes, please.
You know, in my personal opinion, anytime you can extend your culinary drinking water supply without building additional treatment plant or adding capacity, in the long run is a good thing. You know, the secondary, I don't think that you see substantial use increase because of the cost, but I do believe that whether we like it or not, drinking water and treated drinking water is a rare commodity, and it has to be respected, and I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. All right, I appreciate those comments and good questions. Let's go ahead and go back up to our committal of funds list. The next project is RM088, which is Glenwood Irrigation Company. Brad will be doing the presentation. This is in Blaine Ibsen's area. Blaine, do you want to set this up for us?
Yeah, the setup's pretty easy. This is just committing of funds for purchasing 254 secondary water meters, and pretty straightforward. We already approved it. This is just committing the funds. I've jumped through the hoops. Very straightforward.
All right, Brad.
Correct, yeah. So Blaine said it right. They're purchasing and installing 254 secondary water meters, and they have already spent about $350,000 in ARPA grant money, and now they're coming before the board to commit the funds for the loan portion.
All right. Great. Questions, comments? Yeah, no changes here from what we see. I should mention we don't require folks to be present for the committal of funds, but if they are, we'll give them the opportunity to share any information they need to with us. Blaine, I assume you'll be good to make the motion on that. Okay. Moving on to RM116, Bountiful Irrigation Company. Kyle, is there anything you'd like to set up for
again, the next two that we'll talk about are just a continuation of what Blaine summarized regarding the one for Glendale. So
Great.
With that, I'll let Tom go ahead and add any additional.
Hey, Madam Chair, members of the board. This is a Bountiful Irrigation District. They're just coming back for the board for committal of funds for the second round of their water meter funding. The board's already authorized and committed the grant part of this, and that's contracted. So they're just here for the committal of the loan funds, which will be in the form of a bond. So the terms will be, the board will be committing 25.5% of the project costs up to $2,692,000 as a loan, and that will be returned at 1% interest over 15 years with annual payments of about $209,000. That includes reserves.
Great.
So you've heard December 18th as a closing date. This one will also be on December 18th. So our bond council is going to have a busy day. And as far as they're not required, but I think the general manager is planning on attending virtually, and their financial advisor will be in person here, Mark Anderson from Science Bank. So
Great.
That's the report.
Great. Questions or comments? It's pretty straightforward. Okay, let's hear about that next one then. RM123 Benchland Water District. Oh, and that's Brad. Thank you, Tom.
Sorry, let me get to. I didn't expect to come up so fast. Okay, again. All right. So Benchland Water District. This project will be purchasing and installing 2,500 secondary water meters, with the cost estimate and sharing remaining as authorized. This project was part of that 4th round of ARPA funding reallocation. And then, so in the current applicant's current meter project, RM065, they have about 400,000 remaining grant funds. And that might seem like a lot, but it is out of 5 million. And so now the applicant is seeking to proceed by committing loan funds through a bond, and their closing date is set for January 14th. And yeah, and they're asking the board to commit 30.7% of the project cost up to $2,406,000 as a loan for 1% interest over 15 years.
Okay.
And that is staff's report.
All right. Are there questions or comments on that one? Kyle, I assume you're good to make the motions on those.
Yes, I'd
and
be prepared to
support it?
make the motion on that, and I guess just as we come to the close of some of these ARPA-related and secondary meter projects, how do we stand, or where do we sit with meeting our
timing.
December 31st, 2024 deadline?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. For those not that are purchasing online, Shalane says she'll cover that in an upcoming report. Okay. Special items. So we discussed RL 594. Let's move on to RE 446. That's the Provo River Water Association. They're requesting some additional funds. This is in Mike's area. Tom, will you please brief us on this?
Yeah, back in June of 2022, the board committed $65 million towards a project to make improvements to the intake structure and retrofit the control gates at Deer Creek Reservoir. That project also includes bypass pipeline they're putting in. So for one thing, so they can keep the downstream users supplied during the project, and that it can be an emergency bypass in the future. And will also include features to address a quagga mussel infestation. So that's a $100 million project. The board has committed $65 million. The project's under construction. As far as other funding goes, the sponsor, the applicant, has bonded to come up with $7 million on their own, and they have a commitment from the Central Utah Water Conservancy District for another $17 million through an operation and maintenance agreement for Deer Creek Reservoir. So if you do your math, that's $11 million short. And we knew that at the time. The board committed as much funds as we thought would be safely available. And so since that time, the association has approached the state legislature in 2 consecutive sessions requesting $11 million in grant. They were denied both times. And most recently, with the board's water infrastructure funds, they applied for $4 million. And they didn't get any of those funds either. So they've worked something out with Division of Drinking Water for $7 million, and so they're coming back to the board for the remaining $4 million.
Oh, okay.
Any questions about that part? That's kind of a complicated thing, but so they'll be here today to requesting $4 million. It will need to be in the form of a separate bond, because we can't amend the first bond. So that bond will stand as the $65 million. So they will be asking for $4 million. It'll be in the form of a separate bond. Those terms will also will kind of match the repayment on the first bond. Would be 1% interest over 35 years. With annual payments of about $141,000 per year, and that includes reserves. The reason the board awarded the 35-year period was it was a request from the association at that time. I think the staff's recommendation was 30 years at that time. They asked for another 5 years. And so so we're just matching that repayment term with the original bond. Any questions about that?
Madam Chair, two questions. One, on the measures to address quagga mussels, are there currently quagga mussels there? Is this?
No, there aren't. I think at one point they thought they found some quagga mussel DNA,
Right.
but they've been monitoring that and they haven't seen anything since.
And second, just so I understand, the board then is paying 69% if this 4% is approved, okay? And then they have a loan from drinking water for additional 7%, right? The applicant itself is paying 7% of this, correct?
Right.
Okay.
And they didn't have the cash on hand, so they actually went out and bonded for that 7%. So it's all loan except for the $17 million they're getting from Central Utah Water Conservancy District, and that's because of their operation and maintenance agreement that they have.
And can I ask one last question? Sorry.
Sure.
69% seems like a lot. Is that usual for us to fund that much of a project?
We normally do up to 85%, but in this case, 85% of $100 million is a lot of money.
Can I ask one last hard question? Sorry.
No, don't.
They were unsuccessful going to the state legislature twice.
Right.
Why is that?
You'd have to ask the appropriation committee that they addressed.
Okay.
That might be a question. I mean, it might be a question to ask the applicant if it's appropriate.
Well, well.
Yeah.
They probably wonder why too.
Well, it's an interesting setup
Yeah.
because ultimately they're doing essentially an end around. We're appropriated funds through the legislature as well, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I was asking. I apologize for the question.
I guess that would be the legislature appropriation would have been a grant. This is in loan, so it will eventually come back into our revolving funds and can be used again.
Fair enough.
That's actually thank you. Go ahead, please.
You know, Brian brings up a good point there, but I think the legislature's attitude was the fact that because there's so many other water resources that are funded through drinking water and through us and others, that they didn't want to open another door to open that up, to have people coming on a yearly basis requesting that type of funding, I think is what it came down to.
Chair,
Yes, please go ahead.
I have a couple of questions.
Please do.
I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with Deer Creek Reservoir. What's the capacity of it?
I don't know that. It's a federal dam, so I really haven't paid attention to that.
Well, is it big, Tom?
It is big. Is one of
Okay,
the- is
like
what-
strawberry size, like?
It's one of the major features of the Central Utah project.
It's not near as large as Strawberry. Strawberry holds over 1 million acre feet, and I would imagine Deer Creek, I would assume, is probably in the 200 to 300,000 acre foot capacity. So
And then-
it's,
Really
well,
quickly,
I knew it wasn't too far off.
Tom, could you repeat that number that just dropped out of my head?
152,000 acre feet.
So 152,000 acre feet.
And then my follow-up question is, can you tell me the communities that this reservoir serves?
Everything from South Utah or South Salt Lake County through Utah County. It doesn't store Central Utah water per se, but all the water from the Central Utah project has to pass through that facility.
Well, and one of the main aqueducts comes clear into South Salt Lake. I mean, it serves a tremendous amount of area.
Right.
There's 2 different aqueducts, if I remember right. One goes into the Orem in that area, and the other wraps around the point of the mountain and comes back into the Salt Lake Valley.
And so ultimately, over half of the population of the state of Utah uses water that passes through that facility.
So $100 million is, there's plenty of people to help repay that, and it's,
Right.
that's
And-
just checking. Thanks.
And one of the reasons that the price tag is so high is they are working it in a way that they do not have to drain the reservoir. So it costs a lot of extra to work in the wet than work in a dry construction site.
Madam Chair, can I ask one last question? Thank you. I'm curious, they were out of funds. If this is the service area for essentially half the population of the state of Utah, that seems like an odd place to be. Why is that?
That would be a good question for them, but I can give my guess. They have been raising water rates, but because of, I think, because of existing contracts and such, they may be somewhat limited, but they definitely will have to be raising rates for this.
Madam Chair, of course, Provo River Water Users owns the actual dam and the reservoir that is asking for funding, but all of Salt Lake County, that's not Provo River Water Users. That isn't the people who are paying for that project. That's who gets the water as a benefit of it through that aqueduct, but they don't have all of those people paying things. Provo River Users is just a little, well, little's not the right word, but it's Utah County. Provo River Water Users, it has nothing to do with people in Salt Lake County other than they're using their facility.
Go ahead.
And in a perfect world, the Bureau would be funding this and doing it, but we know that doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah,
And so you have a federal dam that here you as a water users, the feds come in and tell you you've got to repair it and upgrade it and do these things, but they don't fund it. So it's kind of between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. We assume, thank you, Tom, and thanks for really good questions and discussion. And we should ask the applicant about those things as well. I assume that Mike will make the motion on that. Jeff Budge will be here.
Yes.
Do we know? Will anyone else that we know of?
Not that I know
Okay.
of. He was wondering about some of the board members virtually, but I haven't heard anything.
Okay. We'll just keep an eye online to see who shows up. All right. Thank you very much, Tom. And then we'll go ahead and move over into looks like RE 309 and RE 362, Moon Lake Water Users Association. They're looking to defer payments. This is in Duchesne. Randy, is there anything you'd like to share as Marissa's coming up to brief us on this?
Well, I was reminiscing a little in my mind last night, and my grandfather actually was a foreman when they did all the concrete work and poured the tunnel, the outlet tunnel. Grandpa was one that was in charge of all of that, and anyway, I personally have worked on this particular spillway at least 2 different times in my lifetime, and there's just some additional work. As they got into it, they found that there was much more damage than they anticipated. Moon Lake just planned on paying for the project and thought they had sufficient funds, but as they've got into it, they found that there was surprises which do show up sometimes when it comes to concrete and voids underneath the spillway. And so where it was an ongoing project, I suggested to Dex that they visit with Water Resources and go from there. And I think Maurice has been working with them, and they come up with a suggested way to help with some of the cost, defer some payments, and allow them to be able to do the project without, because it was in the middle of it, kind of creates some difficulty to funding a project. Is that correct, Maurice?
Okay.
Marisa? So.
Yeah, once they're in the middle of it, it's, we're a 3 to 4 minimum timing. So what this allows them to do is those 2 projects they're still making payments on, deferring 1 year for RE 309. They only have 1 payment left, but that one would be deferred for a year, and RE 362 deferred for 2 years. So all the payments will be just pushed. And that will give them, rather than that cash on hand going to these payments, it can go towards the current project that they're working on. So they're not having to come to us for more funding. Yeah, that gives them the cash on hand to be able to do that. So there will be 2 motions on this because there's only 1 payment left on RE 309. And then there's the motion separate for RE 362.
Appreciate that explanation, Marisa. And I'll have to recuse myself from voting on this because I'm the president of a T&Dot Irrigation Company, which is one of the member companies of Moon Lake Water Users, and so for conflict of interest, I need to recuse myself.
Okay. Great, thank you. And then I'll try to remember that we'll do 2 motions. Yeah.
2 motions. Yeah. So we've got them, and we'll have them up on the screen as 2 separate motions. Dex Winterton is the general manager. He's planning to be here in person. And he might have the president might be online. Okay. But Dex is, said he's planning to come.
Okay, great. All right, thank you very much.
Madam Chair, then the amount of payments that are being deferred are those represented in the chart. They're on 56,000 for this year and 26,900 for 2 years.
For 2 years, okay.
Okay.
So it's over those 2 years. Yeah, so there's 2 years of the 26,900, 1 year of the 56,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And just for the record, the funds have enough capacity or flexibility, I imagine, to handle the deferments.
Yeah.
It's a relatively small relative.
I assume so because Shalane didn't stop me when she reviewed
exactly. but just appreciate the just double checking. Thank you.
And Madam Chair?
Yes, please.
Would Randy like me to make the motion for him since he's recusing himself?
Oh, appreciate that. Blaine actually jumped. I'm so sorry that you can't hear the conversation that happened off the mic. Blaine said that he would go ahead and do that.
Great, perfect.
Appreciate you, actually. But Board Member Van Horn, I do know that Mike Davis is planning on being here during the meeting. But if for whatever reason he doesn't come, I've been meaning to have a backup here. Can you cover the motions on the Utah County area or the Utah area projects?
City.
For Heber.
Yeah. City.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, that's right. Okay, appreciate that. Thank you. Okay.
Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, so board member Davis said he's planning to get online, but I know at one point he also said if he has so there might be glitchy.
Okay, I appreciate that, and I appreciate Dana Van Horn
So it would be not only the
it's a couple.
It's the Provo River
Provo
Water
River
Users one
and
also.
Heber City.
And
Heber City, the 2 Heber City and the Provo.
Yep.
Yes, thank you. Okay. And then we move on to a couple in Charles area, RE 377, RE 420, RE 435. These are all Bear River Canal Company. These are also deferment of payments. Charles, do you want to share anything as Ben is, or I guess Marisa's maybe doing the presentation?
I have nothing to add yet, except that we've been moved around a little bit, and on the agenda, we're in Cache County, but really we're not. So we're in Box Elder County. So anyway, we're good with that. But Marisa's. We were in Duchesne for a while.
Off the agenda,
It's hard.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Yeah, it's hard to pin us down.
I'm glad someone's on their toes.
In the report, it's correct.
Perfect.
Yeah,
I apologize.
In the report, it says Box Elder. Exactly.
And now I'll blame it on Shalane for not catching my mistake.
Okay, Shalane. Anyway, when we get into it, Trevor Nielsen is here during the briefing meeting, and he has a lot more details than I have. But and I'm like Randy, I'll have to recuse myself because I have a direct conflict of interest on this motion. So,
Dana Van Horn, do you mind taking the motion when it comes to that?
No, I'm happy to.
Thank you. All right, questions. Oh no,
you want me to give a little
again,
background?
I haven't had coffee this morning. Go ahead, go ahead, Marisa, please.
So, the GM is a little bit difficult to work with from this company, but you know, we should, sorry.
We all know that.
Good to hear I'm not alone. So this is it's interesting that these both came in about the same time. So they are, and I apologize. I do have Ben on there. It was after I wrote the report that I realized Ben had been the manager for all three of these projects back then, but they're, you know, he's not involved with them anymore because they're completed. And so I was doing Moon Lake, so I just did this one as well. But the same thing, they are low cash on hand, and they just completed a large project, construction on a large project. And so they've struggled on their timing. So it's pushed them out past the winter and into next spring. And that delay has caused overtime charges and other things. So their cash on hand similar is low. So rather than asking for funding for a project that's already under construction, it's the same thing as they're asking to defer payments. Then it's these three projects, and it's for 1 year for the three of them. And you can see in the table there, it equals about $119,000 for those three projects. And they are current on their, I'll add that. They are current on their payments. Is that good?
Okay. Questions, comments?
Madam Chair, just an additional comment that wasn't discussed in this, but interestingly, the Bear River Canal Company has had significant legal fees in the past year as well, and we are an intervener on the Great Salt Lake suit, which has been a significant draw on resources, and we're dealing with another what we believe to be a statewide issue on the appurtenance of water in a canal company and the rights of canal companies. So we may be going to the Supreme Court with that one as well, and it's been a burden on the system. So that's not included in the report.
Thank you. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and keep on moving. I will note that there's a withdrawal, RE 365, Woodruff Irrigation Company. I don't think we need any presentation on this, but does anyone have any questions or comments? Information is in the packet. And then we have a new app.
Chair.
Yes, go ahead,
If I
Marisa.
might, sorry.
Yeah, please.
This one is just kind of an oversight. Should have been withdrawn a while ago.
Yeah, okay.
The changing of the guard changed the feeling about the project.
Okay.
So,
Madam Chair, just to tag on to Marisa on that one. A number of the people have become deceased. Is part of the reason the project is changing, and you know, I used to think only people fought over water in my community until I went to a Woodruff Irrigation Company meeting with Marisa one night, and holy cow. So there's some bad blood there.
that was a long time ago.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Refresh my memory. Staff recommends the project be withdrawn from further consideration by the board. In the past, we haven't necessarily had motions on these. Do you want a motion on this one, or
I think you do. Is that
On
right?
withdrawals, we do.
on a withdrawal?
Sometimes there's several of them, and we kind of do a blanket
Oh, okay.
one. It's the new applications that we won't do a motion on. We just put it in there.
Okay.
But
Charles, are you? I imagine.
Yes.
and so Charlie, excuse me, Member Holmgren.
Yes.
So you won't be doing the motion though, right?
Okay.
Or are you? Oh, that's
Well,
River Canal Company.
No.
Ignore me at this point. Maybe Paul cut my mic.
This is just a
Yeah,
morning night.
no. I'd be happy to make the motion to withdraw.
Yeah.
Consider it further consideration.
Thank you.
Is it Groundhog Day?
I don't know. I'm not sure. Okay, let's. So we'll note that we have that new application, RE 492. I'll note that in the meeting as well. So it looks like we'll do. Ben Merritt will do the briefing on FEMA dam safety funding, and then we're just in information to the board generally. So I don't know. Or do you want to do information to the board, Joel? Okay. Deputy Director, please.
So are we doing the FEMA update now, or is that's being saved for the board meeting?
We'll
Okay.
save that for the meeting. So any information you'd like to share, I don't know if we need to do status of funds.
I think we do.
Yeah.
So if Shalane, if you could do status of funds, and then I think we have a couple of other updates.
Perfect, thank you.
Did we miss Pine Valley Irrigation Company, or was that?
That's just a new application, so it's just for
FYI?
information, yes.
Yeah. I'll bet I wasn't holding the microphone close enough to my mouth.
Yeah, and Ben will
Dana,
make his
sorry about that.
presentation in the board meeting about the FEMA funds. This is just sad, goes to show you how much we rely on Candace, right? That we kind of fall apart when she's not here. Status of funds is looking pretty good. I am excited to get to ARPA, but I'm going to cover this other first. So as you see, Draper Irrigation is the only new one you're considering today from the revolving fund. I did want to go back to Juliet's question earlier asking about interest rates and such, if they were under affordability. Now, as an irrigation company, it's a different scenario. If it were a city that we're looking for a drinking water project that was under the affordability, current interest rates for the board would be about 3%. It's a little over 3% right now. So if we were to fund a city's drinking water project that was under the affordability guidelines, staff would be recommending about 3%. So I did want to highlight that. But you can see we do still have funding available in the revolving fund. There's not been a lot of change to the dam safety funds, and Tom reminded me this morning that after October's meeting, he sent out the next quarter's projected dam safety funds, which we promised to get out to the board members, and I didn't. So I will do that in the break and get that projection to you so you can see where these funds, even though it shows almost $15 million uncommitted in dam safety grant funds, they're already projected for projects that are on the list. City's Water Loan Fund is the big one today with Heber's 2 projects for a little over $4 million coming from that fund. We still have Hurricane City that was authorized about a year ago, but has not moved forward and ready for committal or actual bond closing yet. So there are still a few funds in there. City's Water Loan is one, as we discussed earlier. It's got its own special criteria, doesn't have a lot of growth like the C&D fund does. There's not a limit to what we can fund from there other than what's actually available in that fund. So moving on to the Conservation and Development Fund, you can see we have a lot of funds available still. We have had quite the growth over the last couple years. So even with another $4 million from Provo River, it's not making a big dent, and their repayments over the next 35 years will be significant. I did want to note on that too. I know there was significant discussion, and I don't want to open a can of worms, but I do think it was important to note that was a federal project. They're contracted to operate and maintain it, so they're responsible for it. None of this is free money. It all will be repaid. So It seems a lot from one board, and I'd say to one entity, it's the biggest loan we've ever done, but I don't know that it's the biggest project if we consider the Murdoch Canal enclosure, where we parsed the funds to a few different entities, but that also was quite large. But it is interesting to note there that even the secondary meter loans, there aren't a whole lot of them still sitting out there that haven't been contracted. There are a few on there. You can see all those RM numbers that are sitting there, but they are moving right along. And so to the ARPA funds, this is what's so fun, that December deadline we've been talking about. Look at that. There are only 2 that are committed and not contracted, and one of them's actually weird. We'll discuss that a little bit. Midway Irrigation Company is the only one that we need to get contracted in the next couple weeks, and the holdup there truly is just their federal UEI number that apparently expired and they didn't renew it. So we will be able to get it contracted. You can see you're actually technically over obligated because Hiram has a contract in place, but the board's actions have reduced their amount since Hiram declared their exemption status and are converting the funds for another project. So the amendment that we're preparing for Hiram City is a reduction in funds, and those funds have already been obligated to other secondary meter providers. So, oh, it was that amendment? Okay, so it wasn't done before I finished the status of funds, but so you've done great. We've got those ARPA funds contracted, and we are in good shape. Are there any questions on the status of funds?
Not a question, just a compliment to staff for the work that has been required over the past 2 years with the ARPA funds and the iterations we've had to go through to make sure that those funds were committed, that the residents of the state were able to be the beneficiaries of those grant funds, as opposed to being in being in the form of a loan. And so hopefully, the statement, the proof is in the pudding. We'll see what happens as we move forward with reduction, conservation of water through secondary meter installation and such. But primarily my comment was just a compliment to the staff for the extra hours, the hard work, and everything that's gone into bringing that to fruition. So thank you.
And I'd love to second that as well. Honestly, I feel partially responsible because I was in a different role when this all happened. But you guys have crushed it, and I know how hard it's been. So.
Yeah, it's been awesome. And I will say, we talk a lot about $250 million, but as you recall, there were also additional funds for water conservation projects for those who had metered. So it's technically $265 million. And I like that Marisa, in her project funding section meetings, calls it the funding section, AKA $265 million club, because they really have knocked it out of the park over the last couple of years, getting these. And you all have been great as well, accommodating the number of projects considered at a board meeting, where I was laughing looking at this agenda and going, geez, we're back to mostly regular projects, and it's still a much bigger list than what we used to have. You used to consider a few projects every meeting. Now 8, 10 is not uncommon, and board meetings of way more than that. You've all been great to work with, and we appreciate all your help. But thank you.
Thank you. And I'll just reiterate the comments that 2 of our board members have said and speak for all of us in adding kudos on all of the work on this. And I guess we'll see what's next, right?
Yeah, thank you for those compliments. They're well deserved, and we've been watching it firsthand. I said to Marisa the other day that several of us have been in the position that she's in now, but none of us had the workload that she has, and it's been quite the effort, and it's been amazing. So, the project funding section is doing an excellent job. We have a couple of other updates. One, I neglected to introduce Edward Mueller, who's here from the Utah Water Agent's Office. Just wanted to acknowledge him in the room. And then Stephen Gregerson's also here. We have, one more. Trevor Nielsen. Yeah, Trevor, also with Bear River Canal Company. Thank you. And then Sarah Schechter from the AG's office has a couple of updates. Oh.
Do you? I think the question is, do you have any updates on Great Salt Lake or Water Horse?
Okay. It was on my list here, so. Okay.
Dana, just because she's not on mic, she said Sarah says she doesn't have any updates for us right now.
And searching for some kind of an explanation as to the chaos this morning, I did check with my wife, any astrological explanations? And she was like, yes, Mercury is in retrograde, which means communication will be difficult, and any meaningful action could be dicey. So just add some humor here. So the last item we had was a kind of an update on, there's been a lot going on with the House Bill 280. There was an existing fund study that was recently completed. And Shalane, any chance you could pull up, we had a PowerPoint that we wanted to kind of walk through to illustrate a lot of work that's been going on. Candace has been leading an effort to coordinate with the other water funding agencies in the state, primarily with the Division of Drinking Water and the Division of Water Quality. We also, a couple of other members of the Water Development Coordinating Council are the Community Impact Board, as well as the Utah Department of Agriculture and Food. We've been meeting for months, kind of saying, hey, what are our funding sources? What are our abilities to fund water projects? And so this study was kind of a culmination of what funding is out there, what could be integrated as part of this House Bill 280 effort. So let's proceed through this. The first slide shows what the American Society of Civil Engineers, they rate water utility infrastructure throughout the nation, and Utah's scores you can see on the screen. They look a little low, and I'll say if you look at the national picture, we're not that far out of the national norm, in that we have a lot of water infrastructure in the nation that does need upgrade and does need repair. The need has been estimated at about $60 billion when you add those numbers up between drinking water needs, water quality needs, and irrigation and canal. It is important to note that we're not trying to say that money all needs to come from the state, but just saying as a total need overall. And historically, if you look, the state has covered about 20% of those costs through the state funding programs. So we don't, on the one hand, it's not panic mode of saying we need $60 million tomorrow, but we do know that there are costs coming, and we've been seeing this for years. There's always existing projects that need to be repaired or replaced, and then there's some new infrastructure needed as well. And it would be wise for the state to plan to be able to have funding to participate in those as needed.
Sorry, I'm going to ask the AV team to go back to my presentation, not the Board of Water Resources slideshow. There we go.
Thank you. Let's go to the next slide.
Joel?
Can they bring it up on these screens?
Yeah, we don't see them on this.
Can the board have it on their individual screens?
Wow.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I just had a quick question. Joel, with that, where they did the rating and ranking, did they kind of go down through and list the projects and kind of the premise behind their scoring, or is it just kind of a global?
I would guess somewhere there's probably a spreadsheet in their effort to kind of, but I don't think they're listing every project known or every need in the state. It's more just let's do a high level look at how things are in general. I was a part of that one year for their evaluation of dams, and I can say that they didn't look at every single dam or have a comprehensive list but
Okay.
The timeline for the project, this effort began after the legislation passed earlier this year. There was a status of funds report prepared that kind of showed what is kind of like what Shalane presented on the board's funding. Each of the funding agencies put together something to show that the status of their funds. The integration of existing fund study was released October 31st. Candace then presented to the Utah Legislative Water Development Commission, Utah Water Task Force, to the Natural Resources, Ag, and Environment Appropriations Committee, to kind of show what work is being done. For next year, we plan to have a fee study that will look at that item of the legislation that directed us to look at potentially collecting a fee to go into the Water Infrastructure Fund that would help pay for some of these projects. That we are currently in the process of trying to select a consultant to help with that study. The Unified Water Infrastructure Plan is to be out in March of 2026, followed in July by the ranking and prioritization of projects. This would essentially be a large list of all anticipated projects being ranked and prioritized, and could then be used to help the boards to know potentially which projects should be funded in which order. What the Water Development Coordinating Council is working on right now is kind of a coordination effort, working together to come up with our lists of projects that each agency is aware of. There'll be anticipate some specialization of saying, okay, Division of Drinking Water, you focus on the drinking water projects, and water quality, you're going to focus on the water quality projects, including wastewater. And the board, our focus will likely be secondary metering and dams and agricultural projects, and kind of working together with this prioritization and then working in this new water infrastructure fund into this process. And part of this process could be some sharing of funds between these boards and agencies, of saying, oh, wastewater has this project that's very high on the priority and it's very much needed. They don't have any more money. Can drinking water or water resources help provide some funding to get that priority project completed? Let's go to the next slide. This kind of shows who the partners are in the Water Development Coordinating Council. There was the recommendation, and this may be in a later slide, to have Department of Agriculture and Food, as well as the Workforce Services, which is where the Community Impact Board, CIB, is located, to have those be not considered relevant agencies as defined in the bill, meaning they wouldn't have to do the annual reporting of water projects and their funds, because they do a lot more than just water. Whereas there's those three state agencies, drinking water, water quality, and water resources, that's all we do is water. And those others do so much more than that it was difficult for us to kind of mesh them into the process that the rest of us were following, because water was a portion of what they do, but they do so much more. So that was that. And then the integration of existing fund study, as mentioned, was completed. That is out and before the legislature and available for review. It kind of talks about what we're covering in this presentation. And then to give you an idea of what that process may look like, again, this is not finalized. It's something that we are trying to figure out how would this look if the state were to consider a different method of funding water projects. And it could be that you have an application that would go, these three different agencies, water quality, drinking water, and water resources, would kind of prioritize their projects and submit those to the Water Development Coordinating Council for those to go into a larger unified project list. And then there would be an annual application process where interested projects seeking state funding would fill out an application, and those applications would be assigned to the applicable agency. So if it's a drinking water application, we say, okay, let's send that to drinking water. And that would be somewhat of a change, because historically the board has been able to handle drinking water applications, but we thought maybe that's part of one of the ways that this process could be simplified, is to not have there be that confusion of, oh, this could go to 3 different agencies for funding. Let's say, no, let's have it go to that one that does drinking water. And then say a water quality application, let's send it to that division that does that. And then, as mentioned previously, the board, there'd be several different types of applications that the board would be involved in. Those agencies would then gather additional information and do further prioritization of those applications. And that prioritized list comes out annually on June 30th. So, yes, question from Kyle.
In regards to the Board of Water Resources, how do you prioritize projects when you don't know what they are? Because they come in, as the needs arise, and we address them when they come. So it's not like we have a huge list of projects to look at. So I'm just curious as to how you think that process might work.
And that is kind of the first step on that you see on the slide now, or the previous one, which was an annual application process, to where instead of right now we can receive applications throughout the year, it would be once a year, get your applications in, because then they get prioritized. We also acknowledge that there's a need for some flexibility, that there's some emergencies that come up, or there's small, say, agricultural applications that didn't know they needed a project when the year started, and then now they find out the canal failed, or there's something that they were unaware of that they now need to pursue. We want to have some flexibility for those to still be able to come through the board funding process. But for those larger projects that are known in advance, the idea would be that they go through this process and then have to be ranked and prioritized against other projects.
And if I could chime in just for a sec, I think one of the important things to note here is, I think as we have gone through this process and this study, one of the things we're considering is that probably anything you would fund from the revolving construction fund would not be involved in this process. So if it's a smaller, especially ag project, it would be exempt from this process. So you could still treat your revolving fund as you do now, but it would require some change on the part of larger providers with larger projects. They'd have to be more proactive, and it would also require an effort on our part to reach out and let people know our processes are changing. You may have once a year to apply to have your project considered and get on the priority list. So it will require some changes, I think, but there are some allowances, yes, for emergencies and also for the smaller projects, which we consider to be the ones you could fund from the revolving fund.
How would the dams with that fit in? Because those aren't smaller projects.
No, they're not, but they are very specialized, and it is because the law is already set up very particularly that only funds authorized for dam safety grants can be used for dam safety grants, and they can't be used for anything else. I think we have just always looked at that as it's separate anyway. And those funds are technically part of the revolving fund as well, even though they might be 20 million plus. It's also coming from the revolving fund. So those, while I think we would like to know about them and include them possibly in a prioritization process as far as knowing what projects are important and out there, I don't think they would be subject to the same criteria as the other projects we're looking at. Sorry, Joel, go ahead.
No, thank you. And I think that's part of what Candace has been trying to communicate. She's presented this so many times, and sometimes people just watch and listen and say, okay. And they don't realize that this is a pretty big change from what we're used to. And for folks I know like me and some of the staff, it's been really hard. It's been a difficult and kind of painful process to, probably because we're creatures of habit and we like what we're comfortable with and the way we've been doing things. And so to consider something different has been difficult. But to kind of go through what that process might look like, let's say an application comes in for a canal piping project that they were aware of, it's something we've been planning, we hope to do. They got their application as part of that annual process. It comes to the Board of Water Resources. They would say, are board funds available? Is this one that could come out of the revolving construction fund? If you say yes, it comes to the board and it goes through the regular funding process. If it got to, let's say, a project, and we could use a water quality project because I know that they often are short on funds, say that did not have funding, then it could go over to the right side of the flow chart and say that funding makes it known that we need additional money. The Water Development Coordinating Council could check with the legislature and say, hey, any additional appropriations that could be made, or are there potential consolidation of existing funds from other boards that could come into the Water Infrastructure Fund and have that project be funded that way. So it's kind of taking that prioritization into consideration and seeing how can we make sure that those priority projects get funded. Again, it's a concept that we were requested to prepare directed by the House Bill 280 to do this, to take the look at this. And this is kind of what the Water Development Coordinating Council has come up with. So the kind of final recommendations was to not make changes to the council makeup. It would be the same members. There was the one addition of adding a Water Conservancy District member, and that was Zach Renstrom from Washington County, to kind of add that perspective to the council. That there will be additional state investment needed in the coming years, and that there will be the need for some grants for some of these projects. That we, as mentioned, we wanted to remove the relevant agency designation for those two agencies, Department of Agriculture and Food, and then Housing and Community Development, because it didn't really make sense for them to have the same requirements as the others. And then consolidating the statute would need to be modified to allow for some of that consolidation of funds for sharing to occur of the state funds, and then a kind of a process to do the prioritization, which that one is going to be its own challenge, and we will be working on that, trying to come up with a method, and probably also seeking some consultant help for that as well. So that, I think, is probably the last slide. So it's been a lot, and it's been, I know, stressful for Candace and the team, but at the same time, you look at that and you hope, could this be an improvement? Could there be a way that we're actually making sure those priority projects are happening and the funding is getting where it's needed, as opposed to maybe funds sitting unused somewhere when they could be going to a priority project?
Questions or comments? Go ahead.
A question, I guess, Madam Chair and Joel. Is this an obvious way of improving efficiency within the state, or is this just going out on a witch hunt kind of and being suspicious of entities that work with water projects, or are there entities that have a whole bunch of cash that doesn't get used that needs to be put to work? You have any idea on that?
We asked the bill sponsor pretty directly, saying, are we doing something wrong? And he said, no, we love what you're doing at Water Resources. And I think one of the concerns was one of the concerns, frankly, was pet projects come into the legislature every year asking for money. And they said, no, we have these processes. We have these state funding agencies that's how the funding is supposed to be handled, and wanting to ensure that that's an avenue that is functioning well. So that was one of the ideas. And then the other was kind of what you mentioned, that there are sometimes times when certain funding agencies are completely out of funds and we have to say no applications this year because we don't have any money. And then there's other funding agencies that have excess funds that perhaps could be shared.
So the hope is that maybe increased flexibility? Possibly.
Possibly, yep.
Okay, thanks.
And if I might add just one more note, I think also one of the ideas is to improve efficiency. Well, you know, we feel like we operate pretty well, and as Joel said, some of us struggled with this. Like, I asked the bill sponsor directly, why don't you like us? And that's kind of when he responded, oh no, we think you're great. Some of the others aren't so great. So, but I think the idea is to plan and prepare instead of just respond and react. And I think that is part of the intention here. So it will require some change on our part, but I think we can do it, or at least get the process started, and then I'll retire and let the rest of you go on and do it. Thanks.
Other questions or comments? I mean, I assume that you'll continue to keep us very much in the loop on this. So fiscal 27, that would be July 1 of 2026. So, and maybe you said this, or maybe it was implied, there would be statutory changes this legislative session, and then cleanups next legislative session?
Yes,
that would work? Okay.
There are multiple things, and I think because of the studies that are
that's
kind
what
of
I'm trying to figure out
stacking one on top of another, part of that recommendation of aligning the process to begin in fiscal year 27 is there are actually some requirements out there now that hit before everything's really sorted out. So I think that's what we're hoping for is for some modifications to statute to allow us the time to complete the studies and then implement the recommendations from those studies.
Thank you. Questions or comments? All right, well, we appreciate the update, and it's actually a very helpful slide deck, so thanks for sharing that with us. Anything else, Joel? Okay, well, let's see. It is 9:45, so that gives us about 15 minutes before our next our actual board meeting. So let's just look for a motion to adjourn. All right. I guess, do we need a second?
I'll second that.
All right. So moved by Blaine Ibsen and seconded by Spencer Jones. All in favor? All right. We'll see y'all at 10. Very good.
Give the chair a break.